Hello everyone, I'm Lane Nordlund with the Western Ag Network, and for many months we've been following a story about the aerial gunning of cattle in the Gila National Wilderness in New Mexico. And joining us here today with the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association is Mr. Bronson Korn, President-elect of the association in Bronson. This is really an issue that has got a lot of interest out across the countryside, especially from producers who are public lands ranchers. What could you just share from a perspective as a livestock producer, what is going on down in New Mexico with the aerial gunnings, and why has the association taken a big step to have their voice heard on behalf of their members?
You bet. Well, first of all, it's a blatant misuse of our government agencies deciding that they're going to go out and they're going to remove 150 head of cattle off of over 500,000 acres. They claim that the cattle are destroying the riparian areas down through the Gila River, and there's no evidence behind that. The only evidence that they have actually comes from the Center of Biological Diversity, which, as you know, the organization that they are. There's no real proof on the damage that's being caused. So the blatant loss of a product that's so valuable, especially in New Mexico, which is one of the poorest states in the United States, poverty-wise. Why are we, first of all, just shooting these cattle and leaving them out there to rot, and not taking into consideration we've come up with some real solutions to get these cattle out of there? We understand there's a problem. There has been a problem, but this problem was created by the Forest Service. And so we've come up with real solutions, and they disregarded our solutions.
So Bronson, the Forest Service is classifying these cattle as feral cattle. Is that a correct classification in the opinion of the livestock associations in the state of New Mexico as well?
No, sir. No, sir. These are not feral cattle. These are estray cattle. The reason behind estray cattle is these cattle they belong to a permittee in the United States Forest Service, a grazing allotment, back in the 70s and 80s. And whenever the Forest Service decided they were going to terminate that allotment, they gave these people a very short window of time to get a bunch of cattle off of a very large amount of acres. And so therefore these cattle were left behind. They didn't have time to get them. These are not feral cattle. These are estray cattle. And we have to get that point across that estray cattle belong to the New Mexico Livestock Board until you can prove that they belong to somebody else. But if they're slick cattle and no marks, no ear marks, no anything like that, the New Mexico Livestock Board takes possession of those cattle.
And so obviously this will be not the first time that the Forest Service has conducted the aerial gunning of cattle, or this proposal. I guess first off, how did they come to that conclusion to start with, and why are they continuing that after so much input from various stakeholder groups that they're opposing that aerial application?
Yes, sir, you bet. No, last year in February they came to us and gave us a 3-day heads up that they were going to go in and start shooting cattle. We had very little time to prepare. I'm very proud of the work that our president, Lauren Patterson, has done in regards to all of the interviews, everything that he has put in to trying to get this to stop. And the first time that they did it, the Forest Service did it for the simple fact that the Center of Biological Diversity was suing them for damages to the riparian area. And like I said, there's 150 head on over 500,000 acres. There's not a whole lot of damage they can be doing, and only evidence has come from the Center of Biological Diversity. But the reasoning behind why they're wanting to do it this year will make you really scratch your head. And they have stated that they want to have the Gila Wilderness cleaned up for their 100-year anniversary in 2024. And that's the reason for this operation, is that and it's not because of the riparian area. They're not getting any pressure from the Center of Biological Diversity. This is being pushed on straight from the Forest Service. And that's the reason why, is they don't want unauthorized cattle on the wilderness for their 100-year anniversary.
Now, there's a lot of comments online of folks asking why weren't these cattle rounded up. As you said, there was a very short window of that first initial. I bet it's pretty tough country too, but has the department tried to go in and round up those livestock? Have crews tried to come together to get some good hands to bring them out? I guess. What does that look like?
You bet. Forest Service has done several gathering operations. The problem with the way the Forest Service is doing it is the contract prices that they put out there are unrelative to get the class of people that you need to get in and get this job done correctly. If they're really serious about trying to fix the problem that they created in the first place, they need to come up with the money to get it done right. The country, the terrain is very tough. The infrastructure that the Forest Service has as far as staging these cattle out is very vague, very far and few in between. Most of the facilities, if you can get them to a facility, is very worn out. They're all net wire and barbed wire pens. Whenever you get a bunch of cattle that haven't been in a pen before, the last thing you want to do is stick them in a bunch of net wire and barbed wire pens. But after they do that, the closest thing that they can do is drive them, stage them over to another set of pens that's 10 to 15 miles away. And every time the Forest Service goes in and pulls these allotments out, they are going through and destroying that infrastructure. And so now there's no infrastructure there for them to stage these cattle down.
Now, obviously, aerial gunning is a big part of livestock predation prevention, and it does really help in that too. And as a livestock producer, I know you're not fully opposed to aerial gunning.
Absolutely.
But as a livestock producer, and as you mentioned, it's a waste of resources because these cattle are the Forest Service does just leave the carcasses out there to decompose. That meat could be used to feed those in need as well.
You bet. And we've come up with real solutions. And yes, we are not opposed to the use of aerial operations. And we're not even 100% opposed. Like if you go through and you get a solid gather done, and there's going to be those remnant bulls that are going to be more of a danger to you, to the people that are out there gathering them, to get them out of there, we can work with something like this. But to go through and just blatantly just start shooting everything, absolutely not. It's not something that we as an organization, and this is not a New Mexico problem, this is not an Arizona problem, this is a Western States problem. And we don't want the Forest Service to decide that this is a tool that they want to have in their tool bag for any occasion that they feel that they can use it.
Now, obviously, the New Mexico cattle growers have really been vocal, been on the forefront. The law, Karen Bud Fallon is actually your attorney on this. Can you talk about just talking with the Forest Service to come up with a solution, but then also looking at the legal options as well?
Yes. So Karen Bud Fallon has done an amazing job for us this last year, and is in the process of working with us again this year. You know, some of the ramifications in behind what Forest Service is doing is very troubling. And like I said, this is not a New Mexico problem. This is a national problem. This is an a federal organization problem. And I'm hoping that we make such a stand-up effort that they decide this is something that they cannot do again anywhere else. So we're extremely thankful, like I said earlier, for our leadership. Lauren Patterson has done an amazing job. We've had a lot of advocates step in. We've had some unlikely people help us in this fight, and we look for all the support that we can get.
So looking ahead, if some of our viewers and listeners were interested in more information and the efforts of the association in New Mexico, where can they go? So
they can go to our New Mexico Cattle Growers website. There's places on there in the informational side of it to explain the situation, how the situation has started, and what you can do to help. We would greatly appreciate any vocal help that we can get, any monetary help we can get. This is a costly deal, and it's worth fighting.
Well, and I was just reading the statement that the Gila National Forest Supervisor said that this proposal will help restore the wilderness character of the wilderness by removing non-native species and alleviating the damage caused by overgrazing. and a lot of parallels there with non-native species in terms of wild horses as well. I think the wild horse advocate groups would it would be such a different conversation if it was aerial gunning of equine.
Absolutely, absolutely. If they even attempted to try this on the wild horse issue, which New Mexico has a horrendous wild horse issue in the state of New Mexico. But if the Forest Service ever decided that they were going to try this on the wild horse issue, I promise you it would be the biggest crazy show you've ever seen in your life.
Well, again, this is Bronson Korn, President-elect of the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association. Thank you for sharing some insight on just one of the many issues impacting agriculture in your part of the nation, but also an impact that could be felt across the West for public lands grazers as well. Have a great day, everyone.